10. A doctoral thesis. The Jamaican Sugar Workers Cooperatives. Jamaica, a land of contrasts. Like all Caribbean islands, Jamaica is a very beautiful place with a not so beautiful past. As a colony, Jamaica had four core resources to offer: cheap labor, productive land, sandy beaches, and a great climate. But it is the sugar cane production, more than any other, which defined the oppressive social structure that characterized rural living in Jamaica for centuries. In 1975 to 1981, the Michael Manley government in Jamaica attempted to reform this agricultural structure. This was a decision to reorganize the three largest sugar plantations in Jamaica into cooperatives to be run by its 5,000 workers. The Frome, Moneymusk, and Bernard Lodge estates were divided into 23 farms, each farm covering 2,000 or more acres in cane and comprising 200 members. That was a political plan. The economic part was to be determined by an FAO-UNDO mission comprising 3 members. 2 members came from Europe and in a sense represented the source of financing for the mission. I was included in the mission because a call had been made to Professor Vanick's office in Cornell University to send a specialist in, quote, worker self-management, unquote. This was my first paid consultancy, and I was definitely the junior partner in the team. That notwithstanding, things did not go well for me in this venture. It soon became evident that the European members were unaware of Vanick's work on the economics of worker self-management. Added to this was the utter contempt with which the Jamaican officials treated my inclusion. Remember the team meeting the Director of Agriculture, who promptly sat down after being introduced to the 2 Europeans and by default refused to shake my extended hand. There were other incidents worse than that. One afternoon, when the team was returning from a field visit, we decided to stop at a supermarket to pick up some supplies. I finished my shopping before the others and was about to put my bags into the car when the driver came rushing from across the parking lot shouting, "Put 'em back! Put 'em back!" I turned to ask him what was that. "Oh, is you? Sorry, sir. Me thought it was one of them rude boy trying to thief on the things." Really, you have been driving us around for weeks and you can't distinguish me from a rude boy? I have read many accounts of the failure of this attempt by the Manley government. Some have blamed the failure on the difficulties faced by the cooperatives and the numerous internal and external obstacles placed in their path. Others have pointed out that the cooperative program was in disarray from the start, as the farms faced economic setbacks and as political conflicts developed among the sugar workers, the local authorities, and the government. One author, Dr. Fue, spoke of the logic of the corporatization process being in conflict with the priorities of the middle class, who continued to dominate the Jamaican economy. Anecdotally, I remember interviewing a private farmer who told me bluntly that I was wasting my time trying to organize these workers with foolishness of cooperatives, while they should be down by him helping to reap his bananas. I understood all of the social and political reasons why this experiment in the Jamaica Sugar Cooperative would have been expected to fail. But then, I had witnessed as a counterpoint the development of the Castle Bruce Cooperative in Dominica. Economic development of people. Where through this consultancy, I decided to use the data I was gathering as part of my PhD thesis. The title of my thesis, however, reflected a different orientation than any of the academic studies I had seen published as obituaries to the sugar cooperatives. The title was Agricultural Reorganization and the Economic Development of the Working Class in Jamaica. Rereading it now, I feel more certain of this conviction at the time. I quote, "There are times in which productivity of a unit becomes limited by the relations between the two factors of production. Most apparent is the situation in the agricultural sector, where traditional sugar capitalists have decided to give up the land and where the workers are groping for new forms of organizing production. Indeed, it is an accepted fact that a reorganization of production in the agricultural sector is strategic to releasing new energies in productive activity. But how is the problem solved at the national level, and who takes care of the solution? Jamaican officials have concluded that the structure of their economy is not one that could accommodate the aspirations of the mass of the people. They point to the significance of imports as a major structural defect and allude to the plans for a fundamental restructuring of the economy. As for the consultant's report on the sugar cooperatives, I don't even recall ever seeing one. I certainly did not read or approve of one. I feel sure that if it had said that the government should look to see if there were any bauxite deposits below the sugar producing lands and go for that instead, it would have received a more favorable welcome than what I may have proposed. We are conditioned to speak about using the assets to develop the nation's economy in such measures as the growing GDP, but governments are not the ones who can do so. It is business, or to be more precise, enterprises, that can build this up. In this sense, I do sound like the standard conservative private sector oriented economist. Here is the wake-up call. You cannot develop the economy without developing enterprises. But enterprises perform two functions. They create wealth through reinvestable profits, and they also provide the means for obtaining the material needs of the humans that work within them, that is through wages. To some extent, productive enterprises should reflect the development of productive people. The failure to achieve this is the proverbial tidal wave of underdevelopment of the people. You immediately undermine the integrity of enterprise production if a worker-controlled enterprise fails to address directly or indirectly the material needs of its worker controllers. If we reorganize the sugar cooperatives as labor-managed enterprises, but the workers still have only their wages to use in the market that supplies them with material goods for living, then the urge to do better on one's own self, apart from one's enterprise, grows stronger. The reorganized enterprise should provide the workers with the economic power to get themselves better deals in the consumer markets. Where were the plans for the company store, company health services, company subsidized education, company transportation, etc.? If you are going for bottom-up development over the midst of trickle-down development, you cannot develop the enterprise without developing the people. This is why my thesis ties agricultural reorganization to the economic development of the working class. In enterprise economics, there is always some class development that is consistent with the national profile of economic development, but is not always in the interest of the group that is doing the work. Those of us who have followed the power play of economics in the USA would remember the famous Trump tax cuts. The logic went like this: reducing the tax rate on a company's taxable income gives it an incentive to earn more taxable income by expanding its factory equipment and other business investments in the USA. Sure, it is in the company's self-interest to expand their investments because the rate cut lets them keep more of the profits from their investments. So far, so good. But here is where the tax cut economists try to confuse us with hypotheticals. With more capital augmenting their output, American workers were supposed to become more productive and therefore more valuable to their employers. Companies throughout the economy would then compete against each other to hire more workers, bidding up their wages. These dynamics, the expression of the capital stock and the resulting increase in productivity and wages, were expected to play out over a number of years after the tax rate cut takes effect. What actually happened is totally different. The stock buyback boom. The Trump tax cuts created a windfall for corporate America. Flooded with cash, U.S. private companies announced a whopping $436.6 billion worth of stock buybacks, according to the research firm Trim Tabs. The legislation slashed the corporate rate from 35% to 21%. It also gave companies a tax break on foreign profits if they return them to the United States. The tax law and the strong economy combined to fuel record profits. However, CEOs chose to use this large chunk of cash to reward themselves and their shareholders, not to hire more workers and expand opportunities for the working class to live. Just listen to the reports. S&P 500 companies repurchased $189 billion worth of stock during the first quarter, topping the record set in 2007 according to the S&P Dow Jones indices. Apple, APPL, alone bought back $22.8 billion of its stock, the most of any company in any quarter in U.S. history. Big banks such as Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, and Bank of America each said that they would buy at least $20 billion of their own stock after the Federal Reserve gave them a clean bill of health. The buyback boom was terrific news for shareholders and corporate executives. They loved it. When companies repurchase vast amounts of its stock, they provide persistent demand that tends to boost share prices. Buybacks also artificially inflate the closely watched measure of profitability known as the earnings per share. So what just happened? You don't have to be a student of economics to figure this one out. If there had been any workers represented at the level of boardroom decision making, some of this windfall would have gone to their group. The defenders of buybacks have argued that these are legitimate uses of excess cash. The money doesn't vanish. Shareholders can use their winnings to boost the economy by investing in new companies or purchasing a home. Yeah, right. Of According to Virinyi Associates, since 2008, companies in the United States have spent a stunning $5.1 trillion to buy back their own stock. Shareholders love buybacks because they boost stock prices by making shares scarcer. Stocks buybacks have been a prime mode of both concentrating income among the richest households and eroding middle-class employment opportunities. So said William Lazonick, a professor at the University of Massachusetts, who had studied the impact of stock buybacks. Buybacks have a negative impact on inequality and on the economy. This statement comes from former Labor Secretary Robert Rice in an interview with CNN Money. What big business wants, big business gets. I speak about the tidal wave of underdevelopment. I'm not only speaking about what I witnessed back in 1972 in Jamaica. I am speaking about what continues to occur in Jamaica and in other parts of the Caribbean today. Cockpit Country is an area in Jamaica that is a natural preserve in Trelawney Parish in the country's middle western reaches. It has an illustrious history, including being the home of the Maroons, who established themselves there since 1790. In 2012, the Jamaican Environment Trust, JET, was alarmed to receive reports that the extension of haul roads and deployment of mining equipment had begun within Cockpit Country that borders south of Stewart Town. Despite numerous assurances from the government of Jamaica that bauxite mining would not be permitted in Cockpit Country, reports from community members and site visits by members of the Cockpit Country Shareholders Group confirmed that Noranda Jamaican Bauxite Partnership had begun mining operations on their lands. How did these folks get permission to do this? Even after the government of Jamaica had commissioned a Cockpit Country boundary study, which strongly advised against the government authorizing any further exploration for mineral deposits, mining, and quarrying activities. In spite of the fact that the level of emotions was high and the opposition and resistance by the community was sufficient to question the guarantee and the confidence for potential investors, the government of Jamaica still went ahead in 2016 to sign a contract with this very bauxite company to continue its mining activity. Maybe it was the polite mildness of the language that failed to dissuade the Andrew Holness administration from signing a contract with NJBP. Thanks to the mobilized opposition by the Jamaica Environment Trust, the government of Jamaica had been forced to search for other lands to replace the protected land that should not have been made available in the first case for Noranda Jamaica to conduct its mining operations. As was reported in the Alumni Insider in 2021, this search was necessitated by the recent expansion into Cockpit Country, which received a strong pushback from the people living there. The fact that Noranda held a mining license over a portion of Trelawney Parish that was recently cordoned off as part of this preserve was a blatant violation of their constitutional rights to live off of their own resources. Jamaica's Cockpit Country remains under threat from bauxite mining. This is economic development that would remove forest cover, block and pollute waterways, and displace residents, threaten agricultural livelihoods, compromise air quality, and threaten the health and well-being of thousands of Jamaican citizens. Now, you can win if you're opposing the exploitation of land on behalf of the environment, nature, in 2021. But you could not win if you were trying to do the same on behalf of sugar workers of Jamaica back in 1974. This is not new to me. It is the drama I have had to witness in a coconut banana estate in Dominica, in the sugar estates in Jamaica, in Shell's exploitation of oil in the Delta region of Nigeria. These cases have all been presented as part of a campaign for environmental protection just to stop the government from endangering the lives of its people. By 1976, PhD or not, I had drawn my own red line in the sand.